In this video, we're going to talk about the construction of an angle. We're also going to talk about how we measure angles and something called standard position. So first, let's take a look at the construction of an angle. So an angle is constructed of two rays, which we call sides, that share a common endpoint, which is called the vertex. Now, when we're talking about measuring angles, there's an initial side and a terminal side. The initial side is the side in which we always start our measurement of our angle. So when we're measuring an angle, we're going to start at the initial side, and then the amount that the angle opens to the terminal side, that's going to be the measurement of our angle. So we start our measurement at the initial side, end our measurement at the terminal side. Now, alpha in this case is a great example of a positive angle measure. Positive angles start at the initial side and they open in a counterclockwise fashion and end at the terminal side. However, this is not the only way that we can measure this particular angle. So alpha also has an angle that this angle can also be measured in a negative direction. So negative angles, the opening is exactly the same for these two angles, but instead of going in a counterclockwise fashion, we start at the initial side, we still end at the terminal side, but we move in the opposite direction. So we're going to rotate clockwise and then end at the terminal side. So this clockwise rotation results in a negative angle measure. So you can think about it as moving through the quadrants from quadrant 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. We're going backwards, whereas this would rotate through the quadrants in a positive fashion. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Now, when we talk about angles, we need to have something called a standard position. The reason why we want a standard position is it helps us when discussing where an angle lies in the coordinate plane. If we didn't have a standard position, an angle could just kind of be anywhere, and it would be really hard to discuss what quadrant the angle is lying in. So for standard position, first thing is the vertex. The vertex always lies at the origin in standard position. Second, we have our initial side. The initial side is always going to be on the positive x-axis. So this is our initial side. And then the terminal side will end up anywhere in our four quadrants dependent on its angle. So for example, if we wanted a 60-degree angle, it would lie in the first quadrant, maybe somewhere around here. And this would be our angle measure. Now, when you're drawing an angle, in order for us to indicate that this is a 60-degree angle, we know that that's a 60 degrees in the positive direction. So we're going to start at the initial side, and then we're going to indicate that it's moving in a positive direction with this arrow. And then if we wanted to give it its measure, we could write the measure in degrees there. Because 60 degrees is not the only way that we could have measured this angle. If we left off this arrow, it could have possibly been measured in a negative direction, or maybe we could have measured it in a positive direction but gone another full rotation or something. So when we're talking about drawing an angle, we need to make sure that we indicate its measure by using an arrow like this. That will give us the direction and the measure of the angle. So when we talk about where this angle lies in quadrant 1. Now the reason why we say it lies in quadrant 1 is because that's where the terminal side of this angle is. And that's why having standard position is really important, because then we can talk about where the angle lies. But let's say, for example, we had an angle that had its terminal side here on the negative y-axis. Maybe this one's going to be a negative angle measure. So this is theta here. So theta is a negative angle measure, and we see that its terminal side lies on the negative y-axis. So because it lies on the negative y-axis, we can't say that it lies in a quadrant, because it doesn't lie in quadrant 3 or 4. It's right in between those. So anytime we have an angle whose terminal side lies on one of the four axes, right, the positive x, positive y, negative x, or negative y axis, we call it a quadrantal angle. So Q-U-A-D-R-A-N-T-A-L, quadrantal. So that just simply means that the terminal side of our angle lies on one of the axes. So we can't really say that it is going to be in any of our quadrants, so it's a quadrantal angle.